Honorable Vice Chancellor Mr. Pillai, Dr. Shivkumar, Dr. Monica, Dr. Shukla, Dr. Asha, dignitaries and speakers in the panel, and participants, good morning, everybody. I've been in post-COVID, though the three farm bills that we talk about and we hear about in the news on day in and day out, it is not exactly anything to do with COVID, but it has coincidentally happened along with the COVID, and therefore probably it is contextual to talk about these three. One disclaimer: I am not an agriculturist myself. I am not a farmer myself, nor I am an economist. I am a management student. And my job was to bring the information that's contained in these legislations for the benefit of all the participants, because I don't know how many of us have actually read these particular laws and understand what government is saying and what opponents are saying about it. I have not altered, I have not put any of all the bullets I have got shown in this particular PPT are extracts from relevant material. I didn't put any of my language into that because I didn't want to give any bias, any type of bias to whatever is there. I may have to read a lot of sentences from the PowerPoint, which I hate, but in this particular presentation, I thought I should be doing it because I want to leave it to the participants to make an assessment themselves very clearly about what these formulas are saying. The presentation summary is broadly what is the origin of three laws, what are the objectives of the three laws and salient features of these laws. I may take 3-4 minutes more than allotted 15 minutes. Kindly bear with me. It all started with appointment of Swaminathan committee. That's prior to that, there was a summit of the agricultural summit held in 2005, where Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, eminent economist himself, has said, this whole sentence I have given you, but I would like to read only the highlighted portion. We should enable direct marketing between farmers and NGOs, cooperatives and private companies. I mean, this is very profound statement. He says that government is to integrate the domestic market for all goods and services. Time has come for us to consider the entire country as a common or a single market for agricultural products. We have to systematically remove internal controls and restrictions. We should enable direct marketing between farmers and NGOs, cooperative societies and private companies. The next scene is that Swaminathan committee is appointed. It has studied and came to some conclusions. I'm trying to bring you the conclusions. It's a fairly long, about 350 pages report, but it's a very interesting report to study. But let me just give you only conclusion paragraph, which is itself very very well articulated. What I did is I put sentences in the concluding as bullet points, whereas this is a continuous paragraph in the report. What it says is, Indian economy has moved away from shortages and scarcities. Agriculture sector has potential for creating greater job opportunities and generation of incomes. However, the need is first to unchain the sector. Various orders, acts, orders, etc., which were enacted to regulate stocking, marketing, movement of agricultural produce, and check, and generally to safeguard the interest of farmers and the consumers, appear to have outlived their utility. APMC Act, Essential Commodities Act, and various orders enactment issued thereunder, and Prevention of Food Adulteration Act, etc., has made the compliance of these laws difficult and has led to development of fragmented markets. The taxes at state and local level are on a cascading basis. And finally, the transport of goods across district state boundaries is slow and time consuming. The goods carriers should be detained at border posts for any number of reasons for any length of time. The junior officials and other manning these checkposts are not too reluctant to accept bribes. Very subtly put, very profoundly put. This is the background in which the three formulas were created in our country. What are the three formulas we're talking about? We're talking about three formulas. First one is called as Farmers Empowerment Act. Next one is called as Farmers Produce and Commerce Promotion Facilitation Act. And third is Amendment to Essential Commodities Act. Let us see the objective of the first act, Farmers Empowerment Act. It is exactly what is the objects clause of the particular legislation. Thankfully, each of the legislation does not run beyond 8-7 pages. It's very easy to read and it's completely simple English. It's not any complicated legal language. Therefore, I encourage everybody to read these provisions to be able to make an assessment of what is the crisis we are actually seeing at the Delhi borders. An act to provide for a national framework on farming agreements and that protects and empowers farmers to engage with agribusiness firms, processors, wholesalers, exporters, or large retailers for farm services and sale of future farming produce at a mutually agreed and remunerative price framework in a fair and transparent manner, and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. That is, it's actually empowers farmers to enter into contract farming for different types of users, including foreign consumers. That's what exactly it means as far as this particular provisions are concerned. I have separate slides on salient features. When we see the salient features, we'll understand what these objectives are translated to. Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act. This is a very important point. That is, whereas agriculture by itself is a state subject, post-harvest agricultural produce marketing is a concurrent list. Please understand this situation. Agriculture is a state subject, whereas farmers produce marketing is a concurrent subject. Therefore, central government has taken the initiative of making a law about it. I have underlined certain parts of this particular objects class for ease of understanding and emphasis. What it says is the creation of an ecosystem where the farmers and traders enjoy the freedom of choice relating to sale and purchase of farmers' produce, which facilitates remunerative prices through competitive alternative trading channels. And the last sentence says to provide facilitative framework for electronic trading and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Why should the farmers be deprived of electronic trading? They must be able to trade through the electronic marketplaces. So therefore, this particular legislation gives an option. Also, farmers have been given the choice of selling either in the APMC market or outside of APMC market, so that they have choices. They can fix the price for their commodities. That's what the second law is. The third law, the amendment to the Essential Commodities Act, I have extracted section 1A, which is like an objective of the particular act. Because it's Amendment Act, there's no specific objective stated in the legislation. Just read this. What it says is that central government may be regulating only under extraordinary circumstances. That is, supply of such foodstuffs, including cereals, pulses, potato, onions, edible oil seeds, etc. As the central government may, by notification, specify may be regulated only under extraordinary circumstances, which may include war, famine, extraordinary prices, etc. It very clearly says that Government of India will not regulate stocking of the commodities listed here unless it's extraordinary situation, and extraordinary situations are broadly defined in terms of war, famine, extraordinary price rise. And extraordinary prices also been defined. I will tell you when I'm showing you the salient features. This is the broad three framework or objectives of the three laws we are talking about. I will now turn to salient features of each of the act. First act is Farmers Empowerment Act. Farmer is free to enter an agreement with a sponsor to do what? He can enter into an agreement with a sponsor. That is, a sponsor will ask the farmer to do certain production activity. In that context, he can enter the agreement with a sponsor, and that agreement should contain this. Very clearly stated in this. For supply such produce, including time of supply, quality, gradient standards, prices, etc. Everything about supply of goods has been defined. Minimum period for the farming agreement shall be for one crop, season, or production cycle of livestock, as the case may be, and maximum period shall be 5 years. That is, even the contract farming contracts cannot be extending beyond 5 years, or one life cycle. In case it's a production cycle for an animal or a animal husbandry, whether it's a piggery, whether it is a dairy, whether it is pisciculture, whatever. In all these cases, at least one life cycle should be completed for livestock, and that's what exactly is provided. Thirdly, to facilitate farmers into entering into a written farming agreement, the central government may issue necessary guidelines along with model farming agreement. The doubt that whether the farmer will be exploited is fairly attended to by saying that government will draft a model agreement which should be the basis on which the agreements may be entered into, and specify mutually acceptable quality, grade, and standards of farming produce, keeping in view agro practices, climatic conditions, etc. Grades may be predefined by government agencies. What is a grade will be predefined by government agencies in terms of, say, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, etc. And depending upon the specific area, different grades of produce could be produced. Let's understand that each grade has its own utility. There could be some grade of the crop which can be used as animal feed, whereas grade 1 could be used for human consumption, or grade 6 could be used for what you call fermenting and production of beer and alcohol, or maybe any other type of medicinal requirements, so on and so forth. Therefore, every grade has a use, and therefore, depending upon the agricultural practices and climatic conditions, different grades of the same product can be produced, and all of that can be there. It's not necessarily only best quality should be produced everywhere. Next one is that parties may require the condition that mutually acceptable quality grade standards shall be monitored and certified during the process of cultivation or rearing or at time of delivery by third party qualified assays to ensure impartiality and fairness. This is a very important point. That is, between the two, farmer and the sponsor, it's quite possible that the weaker one get exploited because of the strength of the other one, and therefore a third party assayer will be playing a role in terms of saying that either it is satisfying a particular role or not. And these assayers could be qualified assayers, maybe there could be government departments and so on and so forth, but the third party intervention is there to determine the quality, because when you sow the seed, it's quite possible that you have sown the best quality of the seed, but output may not necessarily be of the quality of a seed sown, and therefore third party assaying may be required. The assayers will become an important professional career option for people who are looking for agricultural sector to be their area where they want to work. Price to be paid for the purchase by farming produce may be determined and mentioned in the agreement. If price is agreed to be variable, it's again important provision. It's quite possible that the price need not necessarily be fixed. It could be variable also. If it is variable, the fixed price should be determined in the agreement, and variation principle should be what you call it, the formula for determining the variability that should be prescribed in the act itself, agreement itself. Again, a very important provision, a very useful option. If sponsor is responsible to take delivery at farm gate, sponsor shall take delivery within agreed timeline. If farmer is responsible, sponsor should arrange to accept the time delivery. I don't know how many of you know, for example, a sugar cane is cut. Once sugar cane is cut, unless it is weighed immediately, the weight of sugarcane will come down because of the humidity or water content will get dried up. So it's general trick that any sugar field nowadays does is that they ask the sugarcane to be brought and they make the people to stand in queue at least 24-48 hours so that the weight of the sugarcane comes down and farmer is shortchanged. In order to prevent such situations, it says that there should be a timeline defined in the agreement itself in terms of how much time will it take to accept the delivery, and in case the farmer has to give it, if the sponsor has to accept at his gate, sponsor should make arrangement to see that it's received in so and so time. All this is predefined in the act itself. Agreed price shall be paid at the time of accepting delivery or payment, and payment shall be made using the method prescribed. Again, very important point. Price should be given at the time of delivery versus payment, and payment has to be done through the mode prescribed by the government. That is, there are so many payment structures today, and the payment structures defined by the government should be specifically used for the purpose of payment, so that there's nothing like there's a proof for payment, etc., very clearly stated. Other features, I need to go a bit faster. Agreements are made in this are exempt from any applicable state act. This is where actually the problem comes. That's why people are shouting. Stock limits, if any, prescribed under the Essential Commodities Act are not applicable to the produce under this act. This is very important point. For example, a contract farmer, a sponsor is asking somebody to farm about 200-500 hectares of land for production of, say, sugarcane, a medicinal plant, or a maize, etc. The output could be so high that the stock that comes into the hands of sponsor may be exceeding the essential commodities limits. How should it be treated? Since a sponsor is obliged to take delivery, this kind of act should not be applicable. Very visionary and thoughtful provision in the act. Agreement shall not have any clause for transfer or lease of farm ownership or empower sponsor to erect any structures on the farmland. Very important point. That is, the sponsor should not have any kind of rights whatsoever on the farmland, and he cannot have any structures to be. That is, the sponsor cannot say, I will have a warehouse constructed on your farmland. Nothing doing. Sponsor will not have any kind of a right on the land at all. Agreement shall contain conciliation for dispute resolution. If conciliation is not effective, district magistrate may appoint conciliation board to resolve dispute. Again, an important point. In case of dispute, how to resolve it is also a part of agreement. That's what exactly the act says. And agreement may be registered with the state prescribed registration authority. This is the area of concern because registration authorities, wherever they are, we know how they behave. And therefore, this is only area of concern as far as I'm concerned. I'll turn to the next act, Farmers Produce and Produce Trade and Commerce Act. It's a wonderful act. People who are enthusiastic entrepreneurs amongst the participants can look at this act for setting up agricultural trade electronic facility. I'll tell you why. You can, as you will see the provisions, you'll understand. Any farmer or trader or electronic trading and transaction platform shall have the freedom to carry on interstate, intrastate trade and commerce in the farmers' produce in the trade area. Very important provision. This is a starting provision itself. If necessary, central government may prescribe a system for electronic registration of a trader, modalities of trade transaction, etc. To start with, there's no registration requirement. If required, only central government will say, if pioneers are there, if they grab the opportunity, there's no registration, they can straightaway set up the electronic trading platform. 3. Trader who transacts with farmers shall make payment for the traded schedules on the same day or within the maximum 3 working days, if procedurally so required, subject to the condition of receipt of delivery. This is a very important provision. In the act says that delivery versus payment is assured, but in case of any exigencies because of the product that we have got, let us suppose for a while somebody brings in 100 tons of chili. You know how much of what is 100 tons of chilies? 100 tons of chilies may mean about 1,000 lorries. 1,000 lorries of chilies have to be weighed. It takes so much time. So therefore, whenever you are talking about delivery, if delivery versus payment is assured, therefore money may not be able to be given you immediately. It should be given only after the completing the process required for weighing, etc. That's what the provision says. Any person other than individual. Individuals cannot set up, but any institution can set up. A trust can set up. A cooperative body can set up. A company can set up. A partnership can have. They should have a PAN or any former having a PAN. Any entity, any person having a PAN or a farmer producing FPO, farmer producer organization or agricultural city may be able to establish a trading platform. No, this is a very important provision. No market fee or cess or levy by whatever name called under the State APMC Act or any other state law shall be levied on any farmer or trader or electronic trading or trade and commerce. This is very important. Unless APMC Act, there is a lot of problems where there are several types of cess and fees were being collected. All that cannot be collected is what very clearly this provision is saying. And central government may through central government organization develop a price information and market intelligence system for farmers, produce and framework for dissemination of information relating thereto. It's very important that let us assume for a while I'm a farmer of what you call producing turmeric. I should know what is the price of turmeric in Nizamabad of Andhra Pradesh, Erode of Tamil Nadu, and some other place in Karnataka. So if I'm getting a better price in Karnataka market, I may want to sell in Karnataka market, move my goods from Hyderabad, Nizamabad to Karnataka to be able to get the kind of price I want to get. And therefore, these opportunities are given for the farmers by giving a price information, just like what we see in the stock market prices. In stock market, televisions and stock exchanges keep on throwing the prices. So people who know see the price, they will take a decision to buy, sell, or whatever they want to do. And finally, dispute resolution is by conciliation. That's also conciliation award is binding on both part. It's also part of the act. Now I turn towards the last section provision, that is Essential Commodities Amendment Act. What it says is that central government may by notification regulate only under extraordinary circumstances defined. What is exactly circumstances defined? And any action imposing stock limit shall be based on price rise, and an order for related stock limit or any produce may be issued under this act only if there is 100% increase in the retail price of the horticultural produce or 50% increase in the retail price of non-perishable agricultural foodstuffs. When you are saying non-perishable foodstuffs, they are talking about pulses. In the case of 100% increase in the retail price of horticultural produce, those are circumstances in which central government may be able to issue this stock limit kind of a rule. These are the various provisions. I have this PPT can be shared. I request institute to share the PPT. People can read it. Then you can understand what exactly these 3C laws are saying. Whether there's a merit in the protest going on or not. Is there a merit in what government is saying? You can appreciate yourself. Thanks for this opportunity.